Trade reports are escalating as an NHL insider revealed the St. Louis Blues are actively on the phone, and with even more reports surfacing that this one perfect player has become available, the St. Louis Blues have a huge opportunity to acquire a player to set them aside from the rest of the teams in the West. We're going to break down this player, the reports around the St. Louis Blues, and so much more in this episode. You're not going to miss it. So, Darius, let's just dive straight into this today, where we did get a report coming from Elliot Freeman revealing that the St. Louis Blues and Minnesota, but we don't care about them, are on the phones. They've been making calls and they've looked at multiple options with this team still kind of struggling. Now, looking at the standings, the St. Louis Blues aren't in the best position, but let's be honest here, just a couple points out of a wild card spot. They go on a hot run. We know this team can do it. Last season, 2019, this team is a team of runs, and Darius, things are getting interesting around this, where we know Doug Armstrong wants to add help to this team, and there's one player in particular that has been looking more available than ever, and that is Steven Stamkos. Now, we can see Jeff Merrick. There's so many reports coming from even Elliot Freeman and so many more guys, but just going in Steven Stamkos, listen, 3 points isn't the best. He's not Steph Curry. 3 points isn't something that he wants to go for, but what is your thoughts on Steven Stamkos? And we're going to dive into exactly why this could be the perfect fit.
Yeah, and as you mentioned off the top, the Blues at this point, they're working the phones. Doug Armstrong, I should say, that they're looking for help. And they have a lot of salary cap space. We've talked about it before. They have the LTIR relief. They can move out another player if they want to go out and make a big splash. And when you look around the league and the landscape right now, there's a lot of teams that are starting to get active. If you think about the Olympics being, right before the trade deadline, essentially, teams might be active in January heading into the Olympics rather than, in the short amount of time that they have between the Olympics and the trade deadline this year, which is in early March, the first week of March. So, a lot of teams are starting to get active. A lot of teams already kind of know where they're falling right now. I think the Blues are going to be a lot better than where they are right now when it's all said and done, obviously. But do they want to go out and get a piece to put them over the edge, right? That is the big question of the day. And right now, we know that Steven Stamkos is available. Make no mistake about it. 3 points, like you said, he's not Steph Curry. That's not what you're looking for right now. And he's certainly not Steph Curry because, since he's moved on from the Tampa Bay Lightning, he's not looking very good. His point totals the last couple of years coming off over 100 point season with the Tampa Bay Lightning, obviously, before he left. So hasn't been going out or hasn't been working out well for him in Nashville. They're probably looking to offload him at this point because he makes a whopping $8 million. And what team around the league can afford that? It is the Blues. If they wanted to make the move, they can definitely afford it. Maybe not all of it. Maybe there is some retained salary, but there's less retained salary in a deal like this to the Blues than there is to most other teams around the league if somebody wanted to pick him up. Now, keep in mind, so there's 2 years left on the deal. That is a little tough. So something to consider, but he's a guy that in theory can be a power play specialist if you set him up properly. The one timer, he's lethal from that spot. They have not been able to figure it out in Nashville, but do you just forget how to play hockey overnight? I'm not so sure, right? I think this is still a skilled player that, in a tough situation, moved on from the team that he was with this whole time, and they haven't found the right mix in Nashville. That team, they have not found the right mix. So could be, a casualty of that. So it's an interesting idea. But I think a package, the Blues would not give away too much, I think, in this scenario. Obviously, with retained salary, in theory, you want a sweetener in there. But if I'm the Blues, I'm looking at this saying, we know you probably want to get out from under his contract. So work with us here. So I think it's an interesting idea, and they have the cap space to make it work.
And I think the big thing is, listen, a lot of people are going to say, hey, Mark, you said perfect center. This doesn't make sense. But when diving into Steven Stamkos, yes, a terrible year, 3 points in 15 games. This is unacceptable for his cap hit. But going into Stamkos' numbers, his best years coming with the Tampa Bay Lightning, of course, he was playing next to someone in Kucherov who is a bit of a good playmaker. And when going to Nashville, he did not have this. Now, going into the $8 million, you'd want some retained. You'd want this in on a cheaper deal as he is getting older and he hasn't had the production. But if you can get him for cheap and retained, if you're looking at Nashville and they say, hey, we have this guy, we want to unload him, we want to go out and spend the money somewhere else than this guy, there is no better playmaker in the Western Conference than no one else than Robert Thomas. Back-to-back seasons with 60 assists. This would be perfect for Stamkos to play on the wing. Looking at the team itself, Stamkos could come in perfectly, fill this out. If you can get him on $4 million, you spoke about the cap hit. There's a lot of cap space with this Blues team. They can waive someone, they can send someone out. Maybe Texas is a part of this with a fresh start and a small sweetener of of a draft pick getting Stamkos. But Darius, looking at Steven Stamkos and the production that he had when playing against, or with someone, I should say, elite in the playmaking, do you think bringing him in just to add an extra winger to this team? Steven Stamkos is getting older, of course. His face-off percentage isn't the highest. He's more of a winger at this point. But with the Blues having the center depth down this lineup, could you see bringing him in and station him with Robert Thomas, just adding extra forward depth to this team could help this team out in the long run with their scoring?
And like we've talked about the last 2 days or so, Alexei Toropchenko is in a lot of rumors as well. So if he ends up getting traded, around the deadline or before the deadline or something like that, it pushes some of the guys down. And Shen could move back to center. Is Dvorsky? I mean, he's playing really well right now. There's no reason to send him down, but is he in the lineup come playoff time, right? I wonder if they want him to get some playoff experience in Springfield first before, making an impact at the NHL level or trying to be in an NHL lineup in the playoffs. So I think it's an interesting idea. Stamkos, like you mentioned, has been playing on the wing predominantly for the last couple of years. He can probably take faceoffs, but I think in play he should be on the wing. He's a power play specialist, I still think, right? Like he can help out in that way. He has that threatening shot, that one-timer. So I think that would be an option for the Blues too. Putting him with Thomas could revitalize him, right? Like it could get him going in that way, put up a couple points. Even if you put him with Suter, I think that's a good idea too. Whoever you put with Suter has been performing, right? So I think that could be an interesting option. Even if he plays a little bit lower in the lineup and you want to move up Holloway up the lineup, then you can do that, but then play Stamkos on the power play, manage his minutes, and maybe he's making more of an impact on the power play, which hasn't been so good for the Blues, but has been since they tried, the running with the younger guys, Snuggerud on one side and Dvorsky on the other has been working, but do other teams eventually figure that out? We'll see, right? So I think it's an interesting idea. I'm not saying to do it, but I'm saying if you look around the league, Nashville, I don't think it's any surprise at this point that it hasn't worked there. They would ideally like to offload his contract. The Blues can afford it in full if they move out one contract, or with retained salary, they can do it. So I think it makes some sense. And then, he still has 2 years left. You have to take that into consideration. But I think there is some use cases for him on the team. Although I will say he is a little bit older. You do run the risk, of course, of that. And the fact that he hasn't been playing well in Nashville. So is it a fact of the matter of it's just the Nashville Predators and it's not working out there? Or is he getting older, right? You have to think about that.
And Darius, just to kind of throw it back to you, because listen, I agree everything with you said about Stamkos, the guy you can get at $4 million and for cheap. That would make sense to bring him in. But looking at a cheaper option on Nashville, if they're looking to sell, would Ryan O'Reilly fit this team a little better? Listen, Blues fans love him. We had him here. We know what he brings. And a cheaper contract on a shorter term. Would you rather Ryan O'Reilly, or do you think the scoring of Stamkos, if he could get back to what he relatively was, would make more sense?
Well, I think if Stamkos can get back to what he was, even close, right? If he can get to 70% of what he was, that makes more sense, I think, in terms of adding more goal scoring. But you know what Ryan O'Reilly brings, right? And yes, you have less scoring in Ryan O'Reilly in theory, of course. Obviously, Stamkos would have to get going again, but he makes less money. He's won a Stanley Cup here before. Centerman, right? Responsible defensively. You can win with him. He would be hungry to win another championship before he retires. He's going to be 35 soon. So I think that could make more sense, maybe, if you're thinking about one or the other. But at the end of the day, they're two older options. And I think at some point coming up here soon, you're going to start handing the keys off to guys like Stenberg, Dvorsky at some point. A lot of these options that they signed, this offseason, like Suter, I mean, they're great right now, but at some point soon, the next couple of years, you're hoping that a lot of these guys can pass off what they've learned to the younger guys and pass off the keys. So you have to think about that, of course, but I think if you're talking one or the other, listen, Ryan O'Reilly, you know what you have in him right now. He hasn't really changed as a player. Even going to Nashville, he makes less money. So I guess that makes more sense.
But Blues fans, what is your thoughts? Would you like to go after someone from Nashville like Steven Stamkos, Ryan O'Reilly, someone else? Let us know down in the comments. And speaking on comments, let's go straight into comment today. Good move. Young players need a police protection. And this was on Lucic signing the PTO. Go check out that video if you haven't. And listen, while you're down in the comments, leave a comment on where you're watching from. Looking at everyone from around the world, it's awesome to see that Blues fans are from Australia all the way to Canada. Let us know where you're living down in the comments. While you're down there, leave a like, subscribe, share this with your friends. We'll be back in another episode, so keep your eye for that. But I've been your host, Mark, with my co-host, Darius, and take care, Blues fans.